Close the door. The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Mrs. Chen was standing in the doorway of my apartment, holding the master key. But everything about her was different. Gone was the courteous smile, the careful distance, the business-like tone she'd maintained for the last 8 months. Her black eyes held something new, something that made my chest tighten and my hands tremble. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. But I did everything right, I said, my voice cracking like a teenager's. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded deafening. We need to talk, David. The way she said my name, not Mr. Patterson, as she always had, sent a chill straight down my spine. I backed away on instinct, bumping hard against my kitchen counter. The apartment felt suddenly, absurdly small. Let me explain, I started. 6 months ago, I was married. Happily, I thought. Sarah and I had been together for 4 years, married for 2. We had plans. A house in the suburbs, kids, the whole American dream. Then I came home early from a business trip and found her in our bed with my best friend, Marcus. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. I'd moved into this rent-controlled apartment in Chinatown because it was cheap. And Mrs. Chen, Victoria, though I'd never called her that, minded her own business. She was maybe 40, with sharp features and graying black hair pulled into a sensible bun. Professional. Distant. Safe. She collected rent on the first of the month, handled maintenance requests swiftly, and never made small talk beyond the necessary pleasantries. Perfect for a man starting over. Except now she was in my living room, and nothing about her felt safe. You've been different lately, she said softly, taking a step closer, her eyes studying me. My face flushed. Had I been that obvious? I don't know what you mean. Last Tuesday, while I was fixing the sink in 3B, you found 3 separate reasons to walk past that unit. Her voice was level, but there was an undercurrent to it, something that made my heart beat faster. Yesterday, you stood at your window for 20 minutes while I sorted mail in the lobby. Jesus Christ. She knew. I wasn't, I started, but she raised a hand. David. My name in her mouth again, like it was a secret. I'm not here to embarrass you. She was close enough now that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive I'd never noticed before. Close enough to see the fine lines around her eyes and the way her lips parted slightly when she breathed. Then why are you here? I whispered. She reached up and touched my cheek with the back of her hand. Her skin was warm and soft, a stark contrast to the efficient, no-nonsense woman who had collected my rent for 8 months. Because, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, I've been watching you, too. The entire world tilted. Every assumption I'd ever made about my quiet, professional landlady evaporated in a single second. The careful distance she'd always kept. The way she'd quickly look away if I ever caught her glancing at me. The way she'd lingered just a moment too long during our discussions about building maintenance. She had been watching me. Victoria, I breathed, and she closed her eyes as I said her name. We can't, she murmured. But she didn't pull away. You know we can't. Why? The question came out rougher than I intended. You're not married. I'm not married anymore. Her laugh was bitter. You think that's what this is about? Marriage? Then what? She opened her eyes, and the intensity in them made me step back. You really don't know, do you? She said. You honestly have no idea. Know what? I was going to ask, but she was already moving toward the door. Victoria, wait. She turned back, her hand on the doorknob. I own this building, David. But I don't just own this one. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was so quiet I had to strain to hear. I own 3 others. The restaurant downstairs. Half the block. My mouth went dry. The slightly rundown apartment building in Chinatown. The elderly Chinese landlady who fixed her own sinks and collected rent in person. I thought she was just another small-time property owner, maybe someone who'd inherited a building from her family. You're not just a, no, she said firmly. I'm not just anything. And you? She looked at me with what might have been pity. You're not just my tenant. Before I could ask what that meant, she was gone, leaving me standing in my suddenly claustrophobic apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs and questions burning in my throat. What did she mean? What hadn't she told me? I spent the rest of the night pacing, replaying every interaction we'd ever had, searching for clues I'd missed. How she'd processed my lease application personally, when most landlords use a management company. How she'd known I was recently divorced without me ever mentioning it. How she'd never asked for references or a security deposit. By morning, I had more questions than answers, but one thing was clear: Victoria Chen was not who I thought she was. And it seemed, neither was I. The next 3 days passed in a blur of hyper-awareness. Every sound in the hallway made me freeze. Every time I left my apartment, I half expected to see her, half hoped for it, and hated myself for both feelings. She had shattered my understanding of everything in a few sentences. And now I couldn't stop turning her words over in my head. "You're not just my tenant." What the hell did that mean? On Thursday, I found a note slipped under my door. It wasn't an official notice or a maintenance update, just a piece of cream-colored paper with her handwriting on it. Asterisk David, we need to finish our conversation. Meet me on the roof at 8 p.m. V asterisk. My hand shook as I read it. This is insane. This is completely insane. But at 7:58 p.m., I was climbing the narrow stairs to the roof access door. She was already there, standing at the edge of the building, looking out at the city lights. She'd let her hair down. It fell in soft waves around her shoulders, catching the glow of the neon signs below. She'd traded her usual practical clothes for dark jeans and a silky sweater that clung to curves I'd never noticed. "You came," she said, without turning around. "You knew I would." She finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. Did I? I moved closer. The night air carried her scent to me. "You said I wasn't just a tenant." "What did you mean?" "Sit, David," she said, gesturing to an old wooden bench that had been up here for years. "This will take a while." When she sat beside me, I was acutely aware of the space between us. If I were braver, I could close it. "Do you know why I processed your lease application myself?" she asked. "I assumed you were hands-on with your properties." Her laugh was soft and sad. "I am. But not like this. For most of my properties, I use a management company. My assistants handle everything from applications to maintenance requests." She turned to face me. "I made an exception for you." "Why?" "Because Marcus Liu is my nephew." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually recoiled, the bench groaning with my sudden movement. "What?" "My sister's son. He called me the day you found him with your wife. He was terrified you'd try to ruin his career, his reputation. He begged me to help him keep an eye on you." The world was spinning. Marcus, my former best friend, who had betrayed me in the worst way possible, was connected to the woman I'd been fantasizing about for months. "You've been spying on me for him?" Her voice was firm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Marcus was certain you would seek revenge. He asked me to look for signs you were planning something vindictive." "And were you? Looking for signs?" She was silent for a long time. "Yes. But not the ones he was worried about." "What the hell does that mean, Victoria? I need you to be straight with me." "I was looking for signs that you were okay," she said, her voice breaking. "That you were healing. That you weren't going to do something stupid." She stood up abruptly and walked to the roof's edge. "Marcus painted you as volatile, unpredictable. But you weren't. You were just broken." I stood, my legs unsteady. "So this whole thing? The apartment, the rent, it was all just about watching me for him?" "It started that way," she said, meeting my gaze, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But somewhere along the way, it became about something else entirely." "What did it become about?" The words tumbled out of me. "It became about needing to fix you." She took a sharp breath. "It became about wanting you to fix me, too." The air between us crackled. I took a step toward her, then stopped. "Victoria, I know this is wrong," she said quickly. "I know it's completely messed up. You're supposed to hate me. You're supposed to feel betrayed and angry, and I feel betrayed," I cut her off. "But not in the way you think." She froze. "What do you mean?" I closed the distance between us in 2 strides. "I feel betrayed because for months, I've been falling for a woman who doesn't exist. The quiet, professional landlady who minded her own business. But that wasn't the real you, was it? David, the real me is complicated. The real me has secrets. family entanglements, hidden agendas. I reached out and cupped her face, just as she had touched mine 3 days before. And the real you is standing here, crying because she's afraid I'm going to hate her for it. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. Aren't you? You probably should. Probably, I agreed, brushing the tear away with my thumb. She leaned into my touch, her eyes fluttering shut. This is so wrong, David. In so many ways. I know. Marcus would never forgive either of us. I know. I took advantage of the situation. I invaded your privacy. I manipulated you. Victoria, I said. I know. Then why are you still here? I didn't answer with words. Instead, I leaned down and kissed her. She stiffened for a single second before melting against me. Her arms wound around my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair. The kiss was frantic, hungry. Months of suppressed attraction and impossible circumstances exploding at once. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. We can't do this, she whispered against my lips. We're already doing it. David, you don't understand. There's more. There's something else I haven't told you. My blood went cold. But she pulled back, creating space between us. The divorce. Your divorce from Sarah. What about it? I may have influenced the timeline. What do you mean? I have a lawyer. A very good one. When Marcus called me, panicked about the situation, I had my lawyer contact yours. Let's just say the proceedings went smoothly. Sarah didn't try to take everything you had. I stared at her. You interfered with my divorce? I wanted to protect you. I thought, Jesus Christ, Victoria. I ran my hands through my hair. Is there any part of my life for the last 8 months you haven't manipulated, David? How deep does this go? Did you have me fired, too? Is that why I had to move into this shithole apartment in the first place? No, she said, grabbing my arm. No. That was all you. The job, the apartment hunt, the decision to start over. That was all real. How can I believe you? Because, she said, her voice breaking, I could have kept all of this a secret forever. You would never have known. So why didn't you? She looked up at me, and something in her eyes made my chest ache. Because I'm falling in love with you. And I can't build something real on a foundation of lies. The words hung between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we could cross. She was falling in love with me. And despite the lies, the manipulation, the impossible complications, I was falling in love with her, too. Victoria, I began, but she shook her head. Don't. Please don't say anything tonight. Go home. Think about all of it. Really think. She took a step back toward the roof access door. If you can forgive me, and if you think we can make this work, come to my apartment tomorrow night. Building next door. Penthouse level. And if you can't, we'll pretend this conversation never happened. You stay in your apartment. I go back to being your professional landlady. And we both try to forget any of this ever happened. She stopped at the door. But David? Whatever you decide, I need you to know something. What? Everything I said about watching you, about wanting to fix you, that was true. But I left something out. She took a shaky breath. You fixed me, too. You reminded me what it feels like to care about someone more than business, more than family duty, more than playing it safe. Then she was gone, leaving me alone on the roof with the city lights and the weight of an impossible choice. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I didn't sleep. I spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, wrestling with questions that had no good answers. Could I trust her? Could I forgive the manipulation? Could I really have a relationship with someone connected to the man who destroyed my marriage? More importantly, did I even have a choice anymore? By morning, I'd made my decision. It was almost certainly the wrong one. But it was the only one I could live with. At 8 p.m., I stood outside the penthouse door of the building next to mine. Victoria answered on the first knock. She'd been waiting. David. She stepped aside to let me in, and I got my first look at her real home. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city, hardwood floors, expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. This wasn't the sensible, no-nonsense woman who fixed her own sinks. This was success. Wealth. Power. Drink? She asked, moving toward a bar cart that probably cost more than my rent. No. I want to talk first. She nodded and sat in an armchair opposite the sofa. The distance between us felt like a canyon. I've been thinking about what you said. The manipulation. The lies. All of it. Her expression was carefully neutral. And I think you're right. It was all wrong. Something flickered in her eyes, disappointment or resignation. But, I said, I think you're right about something else, too. We can't build something real on a foundation of lies. So I'm going to tell you a few truths. She leaned forward slightly. What truths? I knew. You knew what? I knew you weren't just a small-time landlord. My first month here, I did some digging. I saw property records, business licenses. I knew you owned half the block. Her mouth opened, then closed. I also knew Marcus was your nephew. What? The word was a whisper. I found his Facebook page. I saw the family photos. You were in his wedding pictures, Victoria. It wasn't exactly a state secret. She stood up abruptly and paced to the windows. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I was curious. At first, I thought you had some scheme to destroy me. Family loyalty. Retaliation for what I'd supposedly done to Marcus. I stood and moved closer. But then I realized you weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to help me. David, please, let me finish. I was close enough now to see the rapid rise and fall of her chest. Why? Because it was the closest thing to human connection I'd had in months. Even if it was based on a lie, even if it was completely messed up, it was something. I reached out and touched her arm. And because somewhere along the way, I stopped caring about your motives and started caring about you. She turned to face me, tears streaming down her cheeks. You should hate me. I should. But I don't. I ruined your life, David. I meddled in your divorce. I violated your privacy. You saved my life. The words came out with more force than I intended. Do you remember where I was before I moved into that apartment? I was sleeping in my car. I'd lost my job, my wife, my best friend, my home, everything. I was about 2 weeks away from putting a gun in my mouth. She gasped, bringing her hand to her mouth. That apartment, the stability, the feeling that someone was watching out for me, even if it was for the wrong reasons, it gave me something to hold on to. It gave me time to heal. But I manipulated you. We both did, I said, cupping her face in my hands. I manipulated you, too. I played the broken, sad ex-husband because I saw how it affected you. I made up reasons to run into you because I knew you were watching. I gave you just enough vulnerability to keep your attention. I took a breath. Victoria, we're both liars. We're both manipulators. The question is, what do we do now? She stared at me for a long time, her dark eyes searching my face. I don't know. I do. I bent down and kissed her again, this time without hesitation, without pulling away. She kissed me back like she was drowning and I was air. Her hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer, and I walked her back against the window. We shouldn't, she breathed. Probably not. Marcus will, fuck Marcus, I said, the words coming out harsher than I'd meant. He gave up any say in my life the second he got into bed with my wife. She pulled back slightly, searching my face. Do you mean that? I do. Even knowing the cost? The family drama? The complications? Victoria, I silenced her with another kiss. I've already lost everything once. I'm not afraid to lose it again. Something shifted in her expression then. The doubt, the fear, the careful calculation all slipped away, leaving something raw and honest and terrifying. I love you, she whispered. I love you, too. The confession hung between us like a live wire. We'd crossed a line there was no uncrossing. Made a choice there was no undoing. So what now? She asked. Now, I said, we figure it out as we go. She laughed, her voice unsteady but genuine. That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan we've got. Of course, I was wrong. We had other options. We could have walked away. We could have claimed none of this ever happened and gone back to our safe, separate lives. But standing there in her apartment, with the city lights casting shadows on her face and the weight of our impossible situation pressing down on us, walking away felt like the one thing we could not do. "David," she said softly. "Yes?" "Close the door." This time, I didn't hesitate. I reached behind me and turned the lock, shutting us in with our difficult truths and dangerous choices. Outside, the city hummed with 8 million other people living their 8 million other lives. But in here, it was just us. Two broken people who had found something in each other worth healing for, no matter the cost. The most dangerous thing you can do is choose love over logic. But sometimes, it's the only choice that makes any sense at all. As Victoria's arms wrapped around me and her lips found mine again, I understood that everything I thought I'd lost, my marriage, my best friend, my old life, had just been clearing the way for something I never knew I wanted. Something real. Something worth fighting for. Something that started with a lie but was ending with the most honest thing I'd ever felt. The next morning, I'd have to figure out how to tell Marcus I was in love with his aunt. Victoria would have to decide what mattered more, family loyalty or her own happiness. We'd both have to face the difficult work of building a relationship on a foundation of lies and manipulation. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, we had each other, the truth, and the terrifying, alluring idea that sometimes the wrong choice is the only right one there is. "Close the door," she'd said. And I had. On everything that came before, and on everything that might come after. Because sometimes, when you're standing on the edge of something that could either destroy you or save you, the only thing left to do is jump. And hope the person you're jumping toward is brave enough to catch you.